Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're going to love it.
Okay, let's go.
They are all lying to you, and here is your proof. Be right back.
This is a short-term disruption for the long-term gain.
Short-term pain for the long-term gain.
Short-term pain be for long-term gain.
We're going to have some short-term pain with long-term gain.
Short-term pay for a long-term gain.
Some short-term pain, yes, but we've got some long-term gain. Short-term spike for a long-term gain.
Some short-term pain for American consumers.
We may have to deal with that in the short term.
Short-term and temporary.
Temporary short-term pain.
It's going to suck in the short term.
Some short-term pain.
Short-term pain. We have to focus on the short-term.
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 Short-term and long-term.
Short-term.
All right, what's up, everybody? Hey, my bad, man. Tough week this week. I know this is the first episode being Thursday, but anyway, hope you guys are well. Okay, I wanted to start off with that clip because, you know, part of what I want to talk about today is just getting you to recognize narratives. And I am starting, well, not even starting. Oh my God, I think it started with the COVID stuff. Think about like flatten the curve. I mean, seriously, remember that expression? Flatten the curve. 2 weeks to flatten the curve, flatten the curve, flatten the curve, flatten the curve. And you can basically take that to, then it was Putin's brutal invasion, Putin's brutal invasion, Putin's brutal invasion. You know, that was the cheering or the call sign. What word am I looking for? Oh my God, what phrase am I looking for? That was the phrase de jour that you heard when Russia invaded Ukraine and that whole thing got kicked off. Putin's brutal invasion, Putin's brutal invasion. And then when Gaza happened, I'm trying to think, oh my God. Anyway, you get the point. But I played that because that is what all of the Republican talking heads are saying now because of obviously the war with Iran and gas prices spiking like crazy. And again, being another situation where it's a utter abysmal failure versus what Trump said he was going to do and what is actually happening. So you start to see the same pattern being repeated by these talking heads in media. And I'm going to try and actually keep an eye on this and really bring this to you every time I recognize a narrative that is trying to be portrayed. And this one right now, as a way to combat gas prices literally going up 40% over the weekend, this short-term pain for long-term gain, short-term pain for long-term gain. So listen to the rest of what this content creator talked about.
Make sure you get this out there like wildfire. Here's the problem. Mostly everybody in America is brainwashed. Fear-mongering, right? No, it's the truth. And they say, oh, you're watching the wrong news station. It's all of them. Don't y'all remember what Operation Mockingbird is? We'll get to this in 1 second. Let me make this clear for people who still believe their TV screen. If you don't have independent journalists on the ground in these locations, you're going to be out of the loop and completely unaware of anything that's happening. I have those things, and so do other people. There is no right media station. But yeah, shoot the messenger as always.
He's totally right. You seriously, again, I don't even know why anyone would watch the mainstream news anymore, whether it's Fox or CNN. I don't know why you'd watch any of that stuff. It is so obvious that it is just completely narrative driven and partisan politics. Like, why do you even want to subscribe to that? I definitely don't. The challenge is obviously then it makes it harder to stay informed and harder to get your news. But, find a few podcasts that you like and make that your primary source. I will say, I know some people give him a hard time, but man, Tucker Carlson, in my opinion, is probably doing the best reporting these days. I actually listen to him now more than I listen to Candace Owens. I really haven't listened to Candace. I hate to say it as much as I used to. I probably need to get back on that. Although, man, she's had a couple banger episodes the past two, so I'll have to play some clips from those. But Anyway, my point is, one of the ways you can really understand what the narrative and what the direction that is trying to be pushed is by simply seeing if it's being parroted across the board, and if it's being parroted by all the usual suspects on again each respective side, whether it's the usual suspects on the Democrat liberal side being CNN, MSNBC, those networks, and then some of those commentators, or on the Republican side where it's Fox, News Nation, Newsmax, the New York Post, and then all the knucklehead social media influencers on the right. So anyway, if you see either one of those, I say you run the opposite direction, or if nothing else, you recognize that that is the narrative they're trying to push. So, okay. All right. Let's talk about the situation in Iran a little bit. Again, I mean, obviously being someone that was born in Iran, I really do have a vested interest in all this. And, I have had a lot of disagreements with other Iranians and friends of the family and even family and other people. And a lot of it is because, again, I look at history. I look at Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, all the things that have happened in Yemen, Sudan, all these countries. And it's never turned out good. I mean, regime change has never turned out good. So the question is, why would Iran be any different? Now, here's another thing that is very interesting. So on day one of this war, it is now 100% certain. I was certain of it when it happened, but it is now, 10 times over been proven that an American Tomahawk missile accidentally, quote unquote, landed on a school in Iran, and it killed like 175 Iranian children.
This is a Tomahawk cruise missile. Costs around $2.5 million a pop, and we launched 400 of these at Iran over 72 hours of Operation Epic Fury. That's $1 billion paid by us to Raytheon, blown up in 3 days. And here's what we accomplished. On day one of the U.S.-Israeli war in Iran, February 28th, we blew up a school with a Tomahawk cruise missile, a school full of children. Over 150 young girls killed, each one a daughter, a mother's favorite helper, a father's joy, someone's entire universe, killed in a fireball. We did this. Trump did this. Congress allowed this to happen. Instead of spending billions to take care of our own children, we're using it to bomb, maim, and kill children all around the world. And it's just, we can do better. We have to do better.
There's so many people that are really stepping up and creating like great content. That's one of them. That's just some guy I found on Instagram, and people are making a stand. They really are. And it's crazy that you get better reporting, better journalism, better independent news from some random dude on TikTok or on Instagram or wherever versus the mainstream that really, again, and this is why I'm saying you can't trust really either side, even the Democrat, CNNs of the world. They really did not report on this bombing of the Iranian schools as much as they should have. And again, the question becomes, regardless of where you net out on the regime, and again, I've said it before and I'll say it again, I'm not for this regime. I would love regime change, all that. I'm just not a fan of the people that are trying to implement the regime change. Regardless of any of that, you cannot be happy about 175 young school children being killed. And what's insane to me is all of my, not all, but like a lot of my Iranian friends, they don't say anything about that. Nobody commented at all about it. Now, part of that, and honestly, this is something that I think is important. Part of that is many of them didn't even know it happened because all they do is watch CNN or watch Fox or watch the mainstream news. And when something like that happens and it doesn't get reported, they don't even really know about it. Instead, this is who's reporting it.
The bombing of a girls' school next to an Iranian naval base that was apparently the school of choice for officers at the naval base. These were the children, the daughters of the people we're fighting. You have to believe that was accidental. Despite the fact it was hit twice, 40 minutes apart, looks very much like a double tap.
All right, so obviously this is Tucker Carlson. Now, he's being kind of coy in the way he's describing this, and so you'll kind of get the punchline, I think, when I play the rest of it. But by the way, when he talks about a double tap, that's a signature move of the Israelis, and that is their signature move that they did with many hospitals in Gaza, where they bombed the hospital and then waited for aid workers to go in and try to help the wounded, and then they hit it again. That's what's known as a double tap, and that's kind of their signature move. That's why in this case, even though it's a Tomahawk missile that only the United States has, again, I mean, I think at this point, I think everybody knows really who's calling the shots, or at least kind of who's leading the elements to happen. But let's listen to the rest of Tucker's.
Which is to say, a bombing and then an attack on the people coming to rescue the injured. That's what it looks like. But as an American, you have to believe this was a tragic mistake. But we have to verify that. We have to know for certain that it was in order to keep our honor. Because if you wake up in the morning and you're living in the kind of country that thinks it's okay to kill not simply military officers, but their daughters, that country's not worth fighting for.
Tucker Carlson's incredibly savvy the way he presents things. So obviously he presented that in a way where I think you kind of get his message, but he's sort of like, oh, there's no way we would do this on purpose. But if we did do it on purpose, then you have to ask yourself, why are we doing it? I mean, that's pretty much the question. Okay, last clip on this. I really like the way this gal described it. But again, I think it's important for you to understand really the carnage that is taking place. And part of why I try to tell, friends of mine that are so blinded by simply wanting regime change. And again, including a lot of people in my close circle of Iranian friends and family, by the way, and family. And, the question I pose to them is, at what cost are you willing to have regime change? What are you willing to pay for this?
We have some breaking news. U.S. intelligence has concluded that the United States was likely responsible for blowing up the Iranian girls' school that killed 175 people, mostly children. Even though Trump claims Iran attacked the school itself, there's a ton of new evidence showing a U.S. strike caused the explosion, so let me show you. This video is really a smoking gun. So this is a verified video. You can see the Tomahawk missile flying through the air, and then an explosion at the Revolutionary Guard naval base. But we have to keep watching. At the same time the naval base was blown up, we see smoke rising from the elementary school. Now, only the U.S. military uses Tomahawk missiles, so Iran and Israel don't operate Tomahawks. And in fact, this footage of U.S. Navy ships shooting off Tomahawks was taken on the same day that the Iranian base and school were hit. Just look how close the school was to the military base. You can see both are essentially leveled now.
So my contention when it comes to this stuff is nothing is on accident. I mean, the level of sophistication of these military strikes. Here's a great way to think about it. Remember when it was last year, I think, I forget, the Israelis took out some of the top leaders in Iran. I mean, that was like surgical strikes. They would fire something in like a 5x7 window in the middle of Tehran, and it would end up taking somebody out. So they have the absolute ability to be completely surgical about this stuff whenever they want. So I can't accept things like dropping a bomb on a school, even though it's nearby, quote unquote, nearby a military base. I mean, they can get this stuff down to probably inches, if not feet. So, I don't believe anything is done on accident. The question becomes, why is it done?
Despite how close they are, experts say given U.S. intelligence capabilities, they should have known there was a school in the vicinity. Another damning piece of evidence is that same area was shown on a target map during a Pentagon press conference when the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was discussing the strikes. Meanwhile, Trump has been pushing the debunked theory that Iran blew up the school itself, either intentionally or unintentionally, but now his own intelligence community is undermining that narrative.
All right, that's a perfect segue. So if you've been paying attention in the news the past couple days, this guy, Joe Kent, who was I think kind of like the number 2 person when it comes to counterintelligence of terrorism. I think he worked directly for Tulsi Gabbard. He resigned in a very public resignation. And this has kind of set off a lot of waves. Give a listen, Alex Jones. Actually, you know what? I can't find that Alex Jones clip. So let me just read you what Joe Kent wrote himself. This is his post on X. He said, "After much reflection, I've decided to resign my position as director of the National Counterterrorism Center effective today. I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, and it is clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. It's been an honor serving under POTUS and DNI Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard," that's who he's referring to, "and leading the professionals at NCTC. May God bless America." Now, let me read his resignation letter. This is kind of big stuff. The problem is this guy wasn't really high profile enough, so I don't think this really resonates with the average person, but you guys are not the average person. You are not. You are DSD listeners. That makes you highly above average. Okay, so it says, "President Trump, after much reflection, I've decided to resign my position as director of National Counterterrorism Center effective today. I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran." Okay, I read this before. Okay, here he says, "I support the values and the foreign policies that you campaigned on in 2016, 2020, 2024, which you enacted in your first term. Until June of 2025, you understood that the wars in the Middle East were a trap that robbed America of the precious lives of our patriots and depleted the wealth and prosperity of our nation. In your first administration, you understood better than any modern president how to decisively apply military power without getting us drawn into never-ending wars. You demonstrated this by killing Qasem Soleimani and by defeating ISIS. ISIS is fake, by the way. Early in this administration, high-ranking Israeli officials. Okay, by the way, this is so kind of amazing that he wrote this because it's really the first government official, I guess, in a resignation standpoint at this high of a level that's basically saying we're an occupied government. So let me read this again. It said, "Early in this administration, high-ranking Israeli officials and influential members of the American media deployed a misinformation campaign that wholly undermined your America First platform and sowed pro-war sentiments to encourage war with Iran. This echo chamber was used to deceive you into believing that Iran posed an imminent threat to the United States and that you should strike now. There was a clear path to a swift victory. This was a lie and is the same tactic that Israelis used to draw us into disastrous Iraq war that cost our nation the lives of thousands of our best men and women. We cannot make this mistake again." Okay, before I read you the rest of this, I mean, this is pretty amazing. This guy wrote this. Let me just give you my thoughts on that. I don't think anybody tricked Trump. He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows exactly what's going on. Love him or hate him, the guy's a super smart guy, even though it looks like he's definitely losing a step with his old age. But regardless, he knows what he's doing. Nobody is tricking him or deceiving him into anything. It goes back to what I've talked to several times now. Has this been a big psyop since 2016? Has he always been this guy? Or is he now under duress? And quite frankly, it really doesn't matter what he wants to do. He just can't do it or won't do it anymore for, other ancillary reasons. You decide what you think is the truth on that. All right, let me read you the rest of this, because if you don't know who Joe Kent is, this will help you understand why this is kind of so impressive that he did this. And more importantly, the guy's a very credible and legit dude. So here's a blurb on him, which basically is how he ended it. He said, "As a veteran who deployed to combat 11 times and as a Gold Star husband who lost my beloved wife Shannon in a war manufactured by Israel, I cannot support sending the next generation off to fight and die in a war that serves no benefit to the American people nor justifies the cost of American lives. I pray that you will reflect upon what we are doing in Iran and who we are doing it for. The time for bold action is now. You can reverse course and chart a new path for our nation, or you can allow us to slip further toward decline and chaos. You hold the cards. It was an honor to serve in your administration and to serve our great nation." So again, this Joe Kent guy is like a highly decorated dude that everybody loved, and now a significant amount of people love him more. But another significant amount of people, the neoconservative, warmongering hawks, obviously now are calling him a coward. And so, here it is from the horse's mouth.
Mr. President, your director of national counterterrorism, Joe Kent, he just resigned today. He said he can't support your conflict with Iran. What's your reaction to that? And did you?
Well, I read his statement. I always thought he was a nice guy, but I always thought he was weak on security, very weak on security. I didn't know him well, but I thought he seemed like a pretty nice guy. But when I read his statement, I realized that it's a good thing that he's out, because he said that Iran was not a threat. Iran was a threat. Every country realized what a threat Iran was. The question is whether or not they wanted to do something about it. And many people, many of the greatest military scholars are saying for years that president should have taken out Iran because they wanted a nuclear weapon. They were, if we didn't do the attack, or if, I'll go a step further, if I didn't terminate the Iran nuclear deal given to us, one of the worst deals ever made by Barack Hussein Obama. Remember when they sent Boeing 757s over there loaded with cash?
Man, he really mixes and matches things to create whatever he wants. I'll have to fill you guys more in on this Boeing 757s loaded with cash, because that is something that happened. There was a bunch of money, I think to the tune of I don't know if it was in the billions or hundreds of millions, but the U.S. was holding Iranian money, and then Obama did send that money back to Iran. Now, again, that was Iranian money they were holding, so one could argue, well, you have to send that back to Iran. But then on the flip side, obviously, they're like, well, you're sending that back to a regime that is against us. So anyway, that's a little more nuanced or complicated of an issue. Fine, I'll give you that one. But in terms of the nuclear agreement, that nuclear agreement that Obama put together with Iran had Iran saying we won't create a nuclear weapon. So Trump does away with that now to bomb Iran because they're creating a nuclear weapon when they were willing to sign an agreement, which they did with Obama, where they said we won't create a nuclear weapon. So the question is, Trump, why did you do away with that? They had already agreed not to develop nukes. Anyway, there's a bunch more to that, and I'm going to kind of come back to that. But I'm telling you what I'm seeing with this war with Iran. Let's forget whether it's good or bad. What I think is it's being done for some other reason. I really do. And I think it's going to go on for a while. I think it's going to drag out. I don't think it's going to end soon. I don't think there's going to be a lot of, hopefully, knock on wood, a lot of casualties or things like that. I think it's just going to be there. You know what I mean? It's just going to stay there. It's not going to go away, and it's going to flare up when they need a distraction in order to get everybody's attention looking one way while something is happening kind of looking the other way. Like I said, I think I said this the other day. I think this is maybe COVID 2.0. It's something that is meant to cause a major disruption in people's lives. So anyway, we'll see. All right, 25 minutes. Let me see what else. All right, I got to play this. So this is my guy, Jeb Ball. Remember that young kid, Jeb Ball, I had on the podcast? He's the one that cooked Glenn Beck. So this is a clip, him and his buddy, Aiden Nicholas. And I'm going to record a podcast with these two kids next week. It's going to be super fun, I think. Anyway, they put this clip on Instagram, and they were actually gracious enough to add me as a collaborator. This thing has gotten 20.8 million views, 1.8 million likes, 26,000 comments, 166,000 shares, and 1.2 million forwards. This is pretty crazy, but give it a listen. Now, there was a community note that was attached to it where it said Silverstein purchased the tower over 6 years ago. So I don't think it was a recent purchase, but give this clip a listen. These kids did some reporting.
The same man who bought the Twin Towers weeks before they went down recently bought the largest tower on the West Coast. The U.S. Bank Tower in California was recently bought by Larry Silverstein. And for those of you who don't know, Larry Silverstein was the same man who bought the Twin Towers 6 weeks before they went down. With recent FBI insights of a possible terror attack off the coast of California from Iran, the Department of War unveiling their new Lucas drones, an exact replica of the Iranian Shahed drones. Is this their target for a false flag attack to get us back in the Middle East, just like they did 25 years ago?
Larry Silverstein famously never missed a day at work. He showed up and ate breakfast on the 91st floor of the North Tower every single day, except for 9/11. He also took out an insurance policy that covered for terrorist attacks. After 9/11, he was awarded $4.5 billion in insurance. But what do you guys think about all this?
Is this going to be 9/11 all over again? Let us know down in the comments below. My name's Jeb Ball.
My name's Aiden Nicholas.
Like and follow for more America First content.
All right, I seriously love these kids, man. They are hilarious to me. That thing has gotten 20 million views. That's crazy. What a number. Anyway, like I said, though, the one thing I don't think they got right in that video was I do think Silverstein bought that building a while ago, but man, they really, it's an interesting theory. I mean, the funny thing is, if they were thinking about doing something, I think that video by itself and the fact that it's already gotten 20 million views probably foiled that plan. But we'll see what happens when it comes to these false flag attacks and all that. All right, that's it, everybody. By the way, tomorrow I am going to release part 2 of the interview that I did a few months ago with Royce White. Royce is the former NBA basketball player that now is running for Senate in Minnesota against Amy Klobuchar. And it's another very good interview. I will say this about Royce, and especially in this interview, he definitely drops the F-bomb a bunch of times. So I'm just giving you a little forewarning there. And then secondly, I mean, again, I don't agree with everything Royce says. I do think Royce drinks a little bit of the Trump Kool-Aid too much, or a lot of the Trump Kool-Aid too much. Now, maybe he's changed his tune on that because this interview was back in, I believe, December. So it is a couple months old, but it's pretty current with everything. But you'll notice there's a few things that ironically, man, this is pretty crazy. Ironically, he predicted, and that did happen. Namely, we were talking about Venezuela. And you'll see when you listen, Royce is like, take it. We should take Venezuela, which again, I didn't agree with at the time, nor do I agree with that now, but that is pretty much exactly what happened. So anyway, interview with Royce White on Friday, and I promise I will try to be back with a little more consistency next week and maybe bring you a few of those episodes from Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, because they've both had some really good ones lately. All right, that's it, everybody. Pay attention, look for narratives, call a spade, and call your parents.
That was a great way to end it.
This episode was brought to you by the new book, Deep Shallow Dive Into You, available now on Amazon in hardcover, paperback, as well as via Kindle. Pick up your copy today of Deep Shallow Dive Into You, a guide to having a more authentic relationship with yourself. Turns out it is indeed true. Bro wrote a book.